Often I get asked questions, hey Paul, can I take the drill that we were doing on the single bolo or on the single stick, and can I apply that drill to the knife? Can I take that drill and apply it to a spadia daga? Can I apply that to the staff, and etc.? In today's training, I want to show you how Kali is one great system across all of these weapon categories. And in Kali, our empty hands are also considered a weapon category. So stick with me here if you want to see how the skills of Kali from one weapon to the next all become one. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoy training here with me, hit that thumbs up button. I really appreciate it. Let's get to the training. So most Kali, Escrima, Arnis, Filipino martial arts schools, practices, systems, styles are going to start off with some sort of variation of a single weapon. Usually it's a single stick or a single bolo. Some schools focus on the blade. Other styles and schools focus more on the stick. When the stick is in your hand, it's a stick. When the blade's in your hand, it's a blade. Here at Kali Center, it's just my belief that the true essence of Kali is the blade. So everything that we train here at Kali Center is off of the blade. It's off of the single bolo, and then it can transition into all of the other weapon categories, edged weapon or impact weapon. So let's take a look at two really basic drills and see how all this translates across different weapon categories. Let's take a look at our basic cuts first. We're going to work two drills. We're going to work our basic cuts. We have our angle 1, our angle 2, our angle 3, and our angle 4. This is our kind of little template numbering system here at Kali Center. Different styles, different schools, they may have a different numbering system. They might go all the way up to like 12 strikes or 26 strikes or whatever they really want to do. But for us, we mainly have like 7 different strikes that we really kind of give numbers to. But we have that angle 1 and the angle 2, which is down the X, the angle 3 and the angle 4, which is up the X. Okay. From there, we don't really always have numbers for the thrusts because we have a centerline thrust, a backhand thrust, and a forehand thrust. So sometimes as you're kind of training with us, like in person or in our inner triangle, you'll start hearing some numbers coming out. But for right now, for the simplicity of the video and for what we're doing right now, let's just keep it as simple as this. We have a 1 cut, a 2 cut, a 3 cut, and a 4 cut. We have a centerline thrust, a backhand thrust, and a forehand thrust. Now there's a lot of different energies and manipulations that you can apply with each one of these cuts and each one of these thrusts, but for today's training we're going to keep it very, very simple so that way you can transition these drills from one weapon right to the next weapon. So beyond today's training, it just takes a little bit of thought, a little bit of creativity to see how all these different drills translate. You know, you go all the way back through all the YouTube videos that we've put out here. You can take a look at other people's Filipino martial arts or really any martial art and apply the exact same principles. So first drill up, we have our 1, our 2, our 3, and our 4 cuts, right? Our 1, 2, 3, and 4. We begin with diagonals because diagonals split the middle of vertical and horizontal strikes, and they give you that A-frame type of structure, which is a very strong structure. Diagonal strikes have a lot of leverage, they've got a lot of power, and they have a lot of speed, both on the delivery and on the return of the strikes. So we can take that basic drill of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, as you guys already know, you can apply that just with a single stick. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's take a look at how we can apply this same drill with the knife, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now there has to be a little bit of a manipulation here because I want to show you guys something real fast. When we come out 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the longer weapon, you're going to notice how we can get this weapon out there and we can provide some protection. When we come out with this angle 4 on the knife, there's no protection there, and we can't keep this in without risking all of this form and sacrificing all of this, right? There's just not enough blade length to get in there. So this means that there has to be a modification when it comes from the long weapon into the short weapon. And from here, we don't necessarily go into the 4 slash because you're offering up your entire form and your outside flank position, and there's no shield, there's no wall, armas de manos, armor of the hand. There's nothing here to protect you from your opponent entering. So sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, and then we'll slash back down that 2. Other times it's 1, 2, 3, and if we need to cover that low line, we'll either come into a thrust or a quick jab. So there's a little bit of a modification there, but the principle of 1, 2, 3, and 4 still apply. All right, let's take a look at the staff. The staff, I'm going to go ahead and use the double end fighting method. We have our 1, we have our 2, we have our 3, and we have our 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. When we look at our double end fighting method here with the staff, we can go into our short strikes, or we can go all the way through with our long strikes here, right there, where we're using more of the staff. So you can work this out depending on how close and how tight the fight becomes, or how much more momentum and power that you might need right there. On the spear, or also you can take a look at this as the single staff fighting method. We have the same thing. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now that's the same drill. The spear is not primarily for slashing, it's primarily for thrusting, just like the knife. But we're just looking at the drills and how they transition from the single bolo into the other weapon areas. Let's take a look at the empty hands. So in Kali, we have 2 methods of striking with the empty hands. You can close fist strike, or you can open hand strike. The primary method of empty hand fighting for Kali, at least how we do it here, is the open hands. And the reason for that is because it mimics the blade, and it mimics the blade movements. We can grab, we can go into trapping. There's a lot of different things that we can do with our hands open versus our hands closed. So when we take a look at the striking system here, we have that 1 and 2 coming up to 3, and then same thing with the knife. If you need to, you can come in with that low jab. 1, 2, 3, and jab right there. Now we also have the kicking when it comes into the Kali. So we can also go 1, 2, 3, and 4 right here with the knee strikes. Where things start to become a little bit more interesting is when we get into the double weapons. So we have the single 1, 2, 3, and 4 where we're covering all 4 diagonals. So we got to take a look at some drills that will allow us to cover all 4 diagonals, all the lines right here with the double weapons. And there's 2 basic drills for that. We can go ahead and start our basic single slashing right here, which is all on the diagonal strikes. Or we can take a look at the standard 6 count, which will actually work in all of the angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. So from here we can go 1, there's that angle 3, there's the 2 right there. Hit the 1, there's that angle 4, and then there's that 1 again right there. So we're hitting all 4 of the corners on the doble right here, just as we would be if we were on the single sword. Let's take a look at the Espada daga. The Espada daga is very interesting because basically you have all of the manipulations of the single sword and you have all the manipulations of the single daga. So from right here, it kind of is basically like you're playing single sword. In fact, when you're with the Espada daga, you can take the daga out and play the single and then reintroduce the daga where it needs to be reintroduced. So from here, let's take a look at a basic drill to work in all 4 of those cuts. We have our 1, passing the daga through. We have our 2, covering that line. Hit the 3, hit the 4, and cover that low line right there. We have 1, pass it, 2, 3, 4, and cover. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. So same exact drill, working in our diagonal cuts on the single bolo, transitions, same exact drill on the Espada daga. So this is the basic training for today's video, is working off of the cuts. That's the example. I want you to go ahead and go through a lot of the different videos, any of the videos that we've been working here And whichever the weapon category is, if it's a staff video or a sword video or a double sword video, whatever it is, take that one training, take that one drill, and then be creative and figure out how does this translate into the other areas of Kali, all the other weapon categories. So just for a little bit more reference, let's take a look at the basic thrusts and how this also translates. So we have that center line thrust, the backhand thrust, and the forehand thrust right there off of the bolo. 1, 2, and 3 thrusts. And of course we can do this with the stick, right there. We can do this with the knife, right there. We can work the same thrust on the double end staff fighting method right there. We can work this also on the single end spear or staff fighting method. We could work this on the doble calis on both sides. And of course, we can work this right here on the espada daga. So I hope that this video gives you a little bit of some insight and some clarification on the completeness of Kali as a system, as a fighting system, as a self-protection system, and also not only that stuff, but also of a system of a way of thinking. It becomes one solution for a variety of problems. So whatever the tool is in Kali, we can pick it up and we can operate it with however it translates according to the system and the strategy, tactics, and the technical application. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below. As always, head on over to kalicenter.com, continue your training with us right on over there. And something I always tell a lot of our beginner students or people that are just kind of starting out training with us, Kali, this is not the, this is not the animal style of fighting. We're not looking at how monkeys fight or how dragons fight or birds fight. Kali is the science of how human beings fight with edge weaponry, or how human beings fight with our intelligence. Because I think it's pretty safe to say that when your life is dependent on it, or your resources are dependent on it, it is much better to use a tool to fight with than just our bare hands. You know, as a species, we've been fighting for hundreds of thousands of years with tools, and there's really no end in sight. Head on outdoors and go train and make the elements your dojo, as the elements is the true Kali dojo. It is my belief that the elements is the true all-around martial arts dojo. So head on out there, go train, and I'll see you next time.